All right. So today we're going to actually talk about no excuses. For no excuses, the reason we call this no excuses is we constantly have students as faculty that are coming in and having an excuse for everything. I didn't know that was going to be due. I didn't see that. I didn't know what date that was supposed to be there. So no excuses is actually talking about using the course calendar and actually being able to set that up and then use it to be able to help out as far as help the students stay organized. That way they know what's coming up, and what's going to be due, and that way they can't come back and say afterwards, "Oh, I didn't know that was going to be due. I didn't know what date that was supposed to be turned in." So it kind of takes away the excuses that they have for stuff. So as far as for the objectives, we're going to explain the purpose of using the calendar tool. We're going to go through that. We're going to discuss how to effectively implement and use the calendar tool. And we're also going to compare the advantages and some of the challenges of incorporating the use of the calendar tool, and also going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that students would face if it's not implemented or incorporated into the course. So Christina Robinson-Grochette, she's the Vice President at the University of Phoenix, and she's actually in their Gulf Coast region. There was an interview done on her from the U.S. News and the Higher Education for 2012. And she said online students need structure, and study calendar is a great way to create that. She also said that if they have an iPhone or an Android device, they should leverage it to stay organized. So just something where she was talking about, it's important for students to be organized, to be able to keep up with that, especially for the calendar. And then Karen Stevens, who's Chief Undergrad Advisor for University of Massachusetts, again in the U.S. News Higher Ed in 2013, actually came in and said at that point that students really need to be organized, from the beginning to be successful in an online course, and said all assignment due dates should be in their calendar, and it should be in the calendar from the beginning of when the course starts to help keep them organized. That way they know what's going on. And then D2L actually did a survey of students, and their survey found that students wanted to be able to find out when stuff's coming up and when stuff's actually going to be due, which is part of the reason why they actually developed the Pulse app, was to help students be able to stay organized and be able to stay up to date and stuff. So students responded highly to that and actually told them that they wanted to be able to be organized and wanted to be able to see things and know what's going on. So course calendar, when a student logs into their course, this is what the calendar tool looks like to them. I have just a screenshot here from my actual course. You can see here for coming up. It has the date. I took the screenshot up here. Upcoming events like February 23rd, March 16th, March 30th. It actually shows the assignments as what's going to be due. Allows the students to be able to see that so they know what's there and what's coming up. Kind of give them an idea as to what to look at. Course calendar tool can actually be integrated in for discussion boards. It can be integrated in for Dropbox. It can also be integrated in for quizzes as well as additional items. The first one I have here is for discussion boards. The reason I brought this up for discussion boards is so we can integrate it is when you're setting up a discussion board, if you want it to be available and you want your students to be able to see in the calendar, when you set it up, you actually have to come in here and set up the visibility options. You can't just put topic is always visible. You actually have to put topic is visible for a specific date range, and you're going to actually have to check and fill in these boxes here for at least a start date for it to show up. But ideally, since you want students to stay organized on when things are due, you want them to also be able to see when it's going to be ending if you have an end date set up. And there's a display in calendar checkbox that when you're in that area setting those dates, that's where you can check that box and it will automatically add it to the calendar. Same thing if you have it for where you're going to actually lock the discussions to where it's only available for a certain time, not just, here's the dates that has a start date and end date, but if it's only open for a date range, you put those dates in there, and that way those date range will actually show up also when you check that box down below for display in calendar for the discussion boards. The next thing is Dropbox. If you're going to be going in and you're going to be using Dropbox, you want to make sure that you have dates set over here for the start date, due date, and due date is actually a very big one. Do I have to put dates in, or can I just check the box to show in calendar? It's a good question, Dr. Sutton. You would actually have to have dates in because the dates are actually what was going to actually correspond with the calendar so they can see what is there. So if you just check that and you don't put any dates in, it's not going to have a date to actually display in the calendar. So that date range is what it's going to put in for the discussion board. Hold on just a second here. Stephanie's typing. Stephanie's asking, can she utilize the calendar without associating items in Dropbox or discussion board? Yes, you can, and I'm actually showing how to go through that here in just a minute. So for the Dropbox side, when we're actually working with that, again, like I said, you want to put the dates in here. When you come in the restrictions area, make sure you actually put dates in, because the calendar doesn't know what date to put down unless you actually have a date in the box. You have to check these boxes, put a date in for it to actually associate with it. So if you put Dropbox assignments in without dates, and it's not going to have a way to just to associate with the calendar automatically in there. And if you don't put the dates in the discussions, or you don't put the dates in, you can go back in the calendar tool and associate stuff afterwards if you need to. For these dates, the start date, when you actually put that in, that's a date that it's actually available for students to be able to actually go in and see the assignment. In other words, the assignment's going to be available on this date. This is the date it's starting, where it's available for you. The due date is the date the assignment is due. So this is saying, okay, this assignment is due, for instance, 2/21/2017, 11:27 a.m. is what I have, what's in here, currently just showing here on the screen for this PowerPoint. So that's the date that, okay, the assignment's due at this point. The end date is actually the date that's going to be associated with, okay, this is the last date that the assignment's going to be visible. So the start date, a student would not be able to go into the Dropbox to actually start an assignment, to click on it to submit it. The due date, it would be when it's due, and then the end date is the last date. After that time and date that you have in there, they won't be able to access it to go into it again to be able to put anything in. So that's what those dates are. Good question, Dr. Sutton, in regards to that. So some people may not know exactly what those dates do represent. So next, we have quizzes. When you set up a quiz, same thing. By default, it's not going to show up in the calendar. So to have it in the calendar tool, you're going to actually have to come in when you create your quiz, come into the dates and restrictions area, and after you've made it active, you'll have the option at that point to come in here and put a start date and an end date. So the date the quiz is available, the first day, and then the time when the actual quiz goes away where the students can't access it anymore. So you can actually pick those dates in there for the range that you want, and then there's the display and calendar down below where you need to check that for them to actually sort of associate those dates you've put in with the calendar tool. So that way it allows it to be able to go in and take care of that. So it'll be associated. Next, kind of going back to Stephanie's question earlier about, besides just using those other tools to be able to put it in for Dropbox and discussion and associate items, you can. There's actually in the calendar tool section, you can get to it on the home page of when you log into your course, either by clicking the little drop down arrow beside calendar, or you can actually go into your edit course and then go to click on calendar tools from there to be able to access the calendar tool. When you come in to set up a date manually, there are a couple things, a couple ways to do stuff in here to manually set it. One, you have a create event. This would be where you would come in and create an event that's not associated with the course. And when I say associated with the course, I mean associated with D2L itself. So if you were using an item or another part of the course, I should say, like you're going to do like Pearson and you're using one of the My Labs or something that's outside of the D2L where the dates are not associated with the D2L course, this is where you can come in to pull those items in and be able to set it up from there. You have set dates, so you can come in here and change dates for something if you have something already associated. And then you have more actions. The more actions, when you click on the drop down, it actually gives you an ability to associate items that are within D2L, so already within your course. So you can associate discussions, Dropbox, quizzes. You can also go in and actually even associate items inside your content area. So your course content could even be associated on this if you had dates that you wanted them to do specific things. You could even put that in the calendar. So that's different options to be able to go in to find stuff. And you can see down below here, if you have a bunch of dates in here, you can do quick filters. If you wanted to click by something specific, any of these different items you can set up. So you can do Dropbox, checklists, discussions, grades, materials, modules, quizzes, surveys, however you want to do that. You can actually put those, associate all of that in through using more actions, but you can also filter by it to find something quickly to see if there's actually a date entered in. There's also an option when you come in here for the create event that you can add content from this location as well. If you aren't adding content directly in, you can do an event title, so whatever you want to call the event, a description. For the attendees, you actually have the options down here where you can actually filter this. And you could say everybody in the course, or you could select specific groups if you wanted to, or sections if that's how you're filtering your course out. You have a when down here. You can say it's an all-day event. You can put in, if you want, you can put in specific dates and times or time frames for when they want to do it. You can add a reoccurrence. So maybe you just wanted to put in discussion board due on a Sunday night, for instance, for an online class. So you go in, discussion due. Just as a reminder, you could set it up, do a recurrence, and set in the recurrence as to how often you want it to recur and be able to do it that way. You can add restrictions. So if you only want certain people to see it, or if you have people that you don't necessarily want to see it, you can restrict it down that way. You have a location. So this would be great for something, especially for like a hybrid class. If you only meet ever so often on campus, this is a great area that you can go in and set up a reminder in this tool here for the calendar tool to say, hey, classes are this day, this day, this day, and you can put what classroom in there you're going to be meeting in. So that way the students will actually know, hey, I'm supposed to be at campus. Here's where I'm supposed to be meeting. Here's what time I'm supposed to be meeting. So that way they can come in and see all that. One other ability that you have, and it's actually back up here based off the more actions that I didn't go into, just the input. There is an import option. So if you have a calendar that's already created, especially from some of the MyLab stuff, then you can go in and there is an import option to be able to import in calendars into here if you already have dates on calendars. And it'll walk you through for the steps for that. The great thing about it is, especially with student learning, they want to stay organized. So with students wanting to stay organized, we can actually help with the student learning outcomes that we're trying to do by putting the events in the calendars and letting the students be able to use the Brightspace Pulse app. This app will actually sync with the course calendars. So since the students are going to know what's coming up and what's due, the way that we're going to be able to help with this is we're hoping that by us doing this and syncing up with the calendar so they can see what's going on, we're hoping that the students will be more organized, get assignments turned in on time, and be able to follow through more so with what the course dates and due dates and deadlines are, which should help them stay on top of everything, which should ultimately help with retention and then with student success. So we want to make sure that that's the option, that we're doing our part to be able to make sure that we have everything in there for the students. Next, we have there's some advantages, and then we're going to have some disadvantages. Some of the advantages, obviously, with the calendar being updated and with the information in there, students can stay on track and they can stay connected to what's going on in the class. By them having everything right there where they can see it, they know what dates stuff's due, when it's coming up and when it's going to be due, they can actually manage their time better. So they can say, okay, I know I have an assignment due on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. So they can manage their time to make sure everything's done by the time it's supposed to be. It can help them stay organized because obviously if they know what's coming up, they're going to be able to stay more organized on what they have to do instead of saying, oh my gosh, where am I? What do I have to take care of? And also they'll be more confident that they can achieve learning goals because they're going to know what's coming up and what's going on. So it's going to build that confidence to be able to say, okay, I know what I have due. I know when it's due. So just that part of it's a big advantage for students. The great thing for faculty, obviously we're going to spend less time answering questions as faculty because students aren't going to be saying, when is this due? Where can I find where the due date is? So they'll be able to see it and find it easily. So we're going to have those questions. And again, easily find due dates. This is an advantage for students, but it's also an advantage for us. If we do get asked a question or we do want to look back on something, we go, oh my gosh, when is this due? We can easily just go into the calendar tool ourselves, sort, and say, okay, here's when this is due. Instead of having to say, okay, let me go to Dropbox, let me find this assignment, let me find where this is. We can just look right there on the calendar tool and see it. So it'll help us stay organized as well as faculty, full-time and adjuncts should both be able to help them stay easily find due dates and stay more organized. And then obviously, like I said a minute ago, it's going to help with student retention and completion, because with the students being more organized and more confident because they're going to know when stuff's due, ultimately that's going to help with retention and completion for them at that point. So that should help us out as an institution as well as actually help the students succeed and be more successful. Some of the challenges: students have to have smartphones because they're going to have something to be able to download that app if they want to be able to use the Pulse app. So that could be a challenge if they don't have a smartphone to be able to have it right there all the time. However, they can go in and they can access the calendar still in Momentum, so or D2L, so they can actually access it that way, still have it there, but they won't just have the Pulse part of it to be able to bring across. If there's nothing on the calendar and the calendar tool is not being used, then it's going to be a big challenge. Students that have the Pulse app are not going to be able to access it, and they're not going to have access to it in D2L as well. So they're going to be confused and not really know what's coming up or what's due. So that's a challenge for them to be able to stay on top of stuff if they don't know what's coming up and what's going to be due. So as far as the faculty, some of the challenges that the faculty are run into, obviously when we're setting stuff up, if it's something that's not being used currently, remember to check that little box that says use calendar tool. So that could be a challenge if it's something you're not used to doing, to be able to go in and do that. The other part of that is, especially I have spend a little more time to set up course if not using D2L. So if we're using D2L for part of the course, and I put this in here because especially if you're using like a Pearson product or another website, Cengage, McGraw-Hill, some of them, those due dates for those specific areas will not just pull over into D2L. So it will take a little more time to actually go in and be able to set those due dates up. So the initial course setup is going to take us a little bit longer. So that could be that could be a challenge for faculty initially, just to be able to have that extra time to know when they're going to be spending it. It won't take long, because like I said, you can use the import tool, or you can go in and put those in pretty quick, especially with recurring events, because you can put in homework. You don't have to list every individual assignment out individually to say it's Word, whatever, for like my class, or to say, you know, chapter 1, whatever. You could actually just go in there and put, you know, Dropbox assignment due Sunday. So you don't have to be exactly specific, but you need to be, you can actually set it up to where you can actually be a little more vague, but still tell them exactly what it is that's coming up and what's going to be due. So the big thing is, without the calendar tool, the Pulse app for students will not work. So if nothing's on it, it's not going to pull across to the app for the students when they download it. So they're not going to see what's going on and know what's actually coming up. So it's really important that the tool is being used, so that actually helps. Stephanie's asking what makes the Pulse app better than just going to the D2L mobile-friendly site on smartphones and looking at the course calendar. The Pulse app versus just the mobile-friendly site and being able to see the entire course, the Pulse app will actually send updates to the student with having the app, so they'll know if something gets added, whether it be a news announcement, especially if it's something on calendar that's going to be added to it. And it's also something that they'll be able to see. I mean, it also does grades, so they'll be able to see like if something's graded, but it'll actually notify them when there's something coming up and what's due. Versus the mobile friendly, just going to the site, they're going to have to log in every single time to be able to go in to look at it. So the app just makes it really quick and easy because it's right there. It's already associated with the school and with their courses. So it just pulls the information up and it's right there at their fingertips. Staff can say, okay, let me go to this, let me log in, click on my course, go into one course, see what's there, go into another course, because the app syncs all those courses together into one calendar so they can see everything at once. So that's a really good question. So anybody else have questions? And I will go ahead and bring up, just so I was talking about the Pulse app, one other thing. I've tried it. I had a person come to me the other day asking about it. They were taking a course here at Roan State and also taking a T&E campus course, and the app only asks them to be able to search for one school. It doesn't give them the option to search for more. I will let you guys know I have actually put a request in through the product idea exchange on D2L and actually asked them if that's something they could add into that. I did go ahead and put that into Pi just as kind of a recommendation once that was asked the other day. So hopefully that will be something they'll implement, and it'll come out in the future that will be an option to add more than one school in. So just if somebody's teaching more than one course, just knowing that more than one area as far as T&E campus and Roan State, the Pulse app does only sync up for one. I see Stephanie's typing a question. Oh, and good point as far as for what I was talking about for Pi, for the products exchange. That's actually an area that we can make suggestions to D2L, and then they get voted up. They can be voted on for suggestions, and then based on need, they can actually get that pulled up. So that's part of why I got to put that in. Is I figure other schools, hopefully, and other people will actually get that voted up. So this is a suggestion I made to them. So we'll see, and hopefully they will implement that into the next release that they put out for it. So, all right. Any other questions? Dr. Sutton, I think she said she's good. Stephanie says thanks. So, all right, I think we're good. So, good luck with everything, and we look forward to seeing stuff.